Morning, everyone. Delighted to be here to talk to you on the topic of cloud security. And one of the themes of my talk is the fact that you can't really understand cloud security without understanding cloud. So I did like all good security professionals do. I Googled what is the definition of cloud, and it told me that it's a dim or obscure area in something otherwise clear or transparent, something that darkens something or causes gloom, trouble, or suspicion. So I think that was a good start, because I think that's a fairly accurate reflection of how a lot of us feel about cloud and cloud security when we have to go looking at it. But the thing is, cloud is extremely powerful and gives us a lot of capability. And in this boom era of generative AI, I thought it'd be a bit of fun to use the power of generative AI to ask the question, give us an illustration of someone confused about what to do about cloud security. And the first image that came back was this guy here. And now don't say now the likeness is striking, okay, because that was the first thing that struck me. And actually, good news is that DALL-E is also has good gender bias as well, so it gave me a very worried female as well. So yes, and if you look even further, the guys are starting to get even a little bit, starting to look a bit angry. And you can leverage the power of AI to, in a blink of an eye, just generate loads of variations. And then it came up with these guys. So what you see, do you see any kind of common trends with, what the AI is telling us here? Firstly, what does cloud security do to us? It, rapid hair loss, I think, is the first thing. Dimming eyesight is another byproduct. And then I suppose the third one, which resonates with me, which is, can sound a little bit like a foreign language or a lot of gibberish involved when people start talking about the cloud. So what I'm going to try and do is, in the next 30 minutes or so, is just try and unravel that a little bit, demystify a little bit. I'm going to talk a bit about the trends in cloud, because again, you can't really talk about cloud security without talking about the trends in cloud. What are the threats, the key threats in the cloud? What are some of the tools and technologies that are evolving to help us in that space? Also looking at some security frameworks and the applicability of those frameworks to cloud, and then wrap it up with a few takeaways and a few recommendations for everyone. So, as I said, you can't understand cloud security without understanding cloud, and the shift to cloud continues apace. But the problem is, cloud is complicated because it's continually evolving, it's multifaceted, it does mean different things to different people, and that's kind of the nub of the issue, I think, is that cloud is quite a generic term, it's not very specific, it's not always understood uniformly. It does require, to actually understand the detail of it, it does require technical understanding. And it's not just about the cloud as it's operating. There's a whole, as Richard mentioned, we've got to understand the whole life cycle, from development through integration, deployment, and operations, because so much of cloud now is about that whole full DevOps life cycle. And just because, it is everywhere. Like, there's a guy here saying that his report is concluding that, the organization doesn't need cloud, and, I'm going to share it on Dropbox so you can read it. And I think that just illustrates the point that we're using cloud all the time, and we're not even realizing it. We're using SaaS applications. A lot of the systems we use, they're connected to the cloud. When we talk about cloud, we're talking about public cloud, but also about private clouds. All these applications are using web APIs to talk to one another, and then we've got the whole cloud native development lifecycle as well. So to get cloud security right, we must understand cloud, and if we don't, then from a security perspective, we're going to be in trouble. But the definitions can be confusing. Like, there's a good definition from Gartner, it's a style of computing which is scalable and elastic, IT-enabled capabilities delivered as a service using internet technologies. And you can kind of get your head around that. That makes kind of sense, but it doesn't really help you in terms of, well, what do I do then to lock it down and secure it? And then it's a bit more granular. Yeah, sometimes it's helpful to think about, well, there's different forms of cloud. So we think of it as one or more of infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service, and there are new as a services developing in the cloud space as well. But traditionally, those have been the big three, if you like. Sometimes people say, well, does cloud equal not on-prem? Maybe, so it's everything that's not on-prem. But I think that's kind of not really strictly true, because then, you have to consider private cloud computing as well, which is used by only one organization and ensures that it's completely isolated. But, on-prem, is effectively can be private cloud also, providing compute and applications remotely from a private or rented data center. So the cloud really refers more to the means of access rather than whether it's publicly owned or privately owned. So that needs to be encompassed, if you like, in your cloud security strategy. So one way of thinking about it is if you add public cloud, private cloud, and SaaS, really that's the majority of today's IT. And that is worth considering when you're thinking about cloud security. And indeed, cloud security is expected to overtake traditional spending within the next couple of years. But that cloud is really only the public cloud stuff. It's the infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. But traditional also includes all that private cloud infrastructure spending in your private and rented data centers. So in reality, we're there today already. We're actually spending more on this cloud infrastructure than we ever have before. And the stats now are that actually 65% of organizations are heavy users of cloud, and the other 35% are moderate or light users. So pretty much everyone's using it, with the majority using it quite heavily. An interesting just side point when I was actually looking at this, interestingly, the cloud spend is not replacing the traditional spend. So you can see that the totality of cost is going up, because even that traditional spend, that investment in that on-prem infrastructure, the endpoint infrastructure, the private cloud infrastructure, all of that is growing as well. Another thing to take into account about security, take into account with cloud when you're considering security, is that it's mostly not single cloud anymore. 87% of organizations are multi-cloud, and 72% are hybrid, public and private. So again, it's not about just going into one cloud environment and securing that. You've got now distributed applications, distributed infrastructure across all these different environments. And by 2025, 80% of enterprises will have adopted multiple public clouds. So now you're looking at public-private with multiple public as well. So it's no longer just a case of, I need to worry about my AWS or worry about my Azure infrastructure. You need to consider that multi-cloud architecture when you're considering your security as well. And then on the SaaS side, that's continuing to grow, and there's been a proliferation of SaaS applications used by organizations over the last few years, where now the average organization is using upwards of 130 SaaS applications across their business, of which IT is only aware of about 1/3 of those. And that's all to do with the decentralization of the procurement and the budgets and the ease of consumption and purchasing, if you like, of these applications. And that's not going to change anytime soon, even for very traditional workplaces that shy away from SaaS. It's expected that that they will be using like 40% of their SaaS applications applications will be SaaS-based, but the vast majority of applications in use in enterprises in the future will be SaaS-based as well. So that kind of covers, I suppose, what's happening in the landscape around cloud and to be aware of those trends. So what are the threats then we need to face in security? So a chink of good news is that for the last 10 years, in all the surveys, cloud security has been the top challenge being reported in cloud. However, for the first time this year, it's no longer number one. So does that mean we can all relax? So it's not such a big deal anymore? Unfortunately, not the case. It is true that managing cloud spend is now the top challenge in terms of cloud. Security is still up there at number 2. Still 80% of organizations see it as a big, big challenge. So it's not going away anytime soon. And I think the reason why that slight shift has occurred is, well, you saw those graphs around the cloud spend going up and up and up. So it's becoming very pertinent for organizations to think about managing that spend. Whereas in the early days, spend was, considered to be maybe not as big an issue. You weren't using it as much. And even, there was even a time when people thought that cloud meant saving money, which I think we all realize now is not the case. And also, I think from a security perspective, people were worried about, is my data, are my applications going to be secure in someone else's infrastructure in public cloud? And there was a lot of concern about that. Those concerns have abated slightly in that organizations are more comfortable about utilizing public cloud for their data and for their applications. But however, as we'll see, that's not the full picture from a security point of view. The thing about the sheer power of cloud in terms of its scale, almost infinite scalability, and its convenient and near ubiquitous access from anywhere. That's its power. That's what it kind of delivers. However, the other side of that benefit coin is that it's a concentration of a lot of data, a lot of resource, a lot of a threat surface now being made readily available out there for unfortunately the bad guys to access. And take an example of, here's some examples over the last 12 months of cloud breaches, and just picking the Shanghai police breach last year, where the data of 1 billion citizens was leaked due to a cloud management console being left open on the internet. And it's just that sheer, one tiny vulnerability, one tiny misconfiguration, and then suddenly that enormity of that data and that capability is suddenly exposed. So it's that attack surface that's been exposed that is really the greatest challenge that we have with cloud. And Bill Clinton was famous for his statement, it's the economy stupid, about simplifying down what is the issue around winning elections. Well, if he was in charge of cloud security, he'd say it's the configuration stupid. Because what we see is that cloud breaches, the root cause of cloud breaches in the vast, vast majority of cases is actually customer misconfiguration or mistake, not so much by the provider, but by the user, the customer, by us, the organizations that are using cloud. And that brings into the point that it's really important when you look at these different forms of cloud to look at where your responsibility lies and make sure that you have the configuration in place to secure those different forms of cloud. So in the shared responsibility model, from an infrastructure as a service point of view, customer has way more responsibility around networking, operating systems, middleware, applications, right up to the data and the people accessing it. And any mistake in any of those layers, and you can be exposed. But even on the SaaS side, even though the provider is taking care of many more layers of the responsibility, it's still your responsibility about what data is going into those applications. Is it sensitive data? Should it be going in there? Who are the people accessing that? Are they sharing it in the right way? Do they have the right permissions? So depending on the level of cloud that you're using, you still need to be aware of the configuration side of that. Then a slightly wider view, the Cloud Computing Alliance, one of the large bodies thinking about cloud security on a continuous basis, they did a global survey last year and came up with what they called the Pandemic 11, the top threats in cloud that all of their members and organizations worldwide are seeing. And again, the key themes you see are things around misconfiguration, accidents, managing identities, credentials, key accounts, insecure interfaces and APIs, insecure development, the whole kind of third-party side of things, and even just a lack of proper security architecture and strategy. So stuff just appearing in the cloud without any kind of forethought are some of the top threats that have been identified there. And on the SaaS side, securing SaaS apps is still the biggest concern for organizations managing SaaS, way more than the cost of SaaS licensing, believe it or not, and also managing that sprawl is a big issue. But securing SaaS is really the top issue for organizations with all that proliferation of SaaS applications. And the top themes on the SaaS side would be just new unauthorized SaaS apps appearing within your organization, users misusing it, or policy violations, sharing of sensitive data through those applications as well. So we've covered a lot of the top threats. Now I'm going to talk about some of the tools that are evolving to help in this space. And it is very much a shifting landscape, as you're going to see in a moment. I'm going to focus in on the cloud security specific tools, but I will make the point that when you look at the landscape of cloud security or the security tools and technologies, really there's very few of them now that don't have a relevance to cloud, because of the fact that cloud is really IT these days. So therefore, what tools these days are just say, well, it only works if you have a server installed in the corner of your office and you can apply a tool to that. It's not the case anymore. But so we couldn't, in the space of 30 minutes cover the entire tool landscape, but I'm going to hone in on specifically the tools focusing on cloud security. And it is a confusing alphabet soup of terms and acronyms that are really hard to get your head around. So in order to help with that, what I've done is I've just broken it down into a few areas, because cloud security tools are on the rise. If you look at the venture capital investment into security tooling, cloud security tools investment has grown 4x in the last couple of years. So it's really the hottest area, if you like, of security because of the very threats that I've just talked about. And also, I talked earlier about the multi-cloud environment, and the leading multi-cloud management tool space right now is security tools. So 30% of all organizations who are investing in multi-cloud tools are investing in security tools, and for larger organizations, that's above 60%. So I think organizations are trying to grapple with this idea of managing security of multiple clouds, and they're putting their money in this area to help them. So as I said, there's kind of a few different areas in order to kind of just categorize what's going on in the space, which is quite evolving. I think you can break down the cloud security tooling and technologies into, you need to secure the access into cloud, you need to secure the configuration, this idea that it's the configuration stupid. So you need to secure the cloud configuration, you need to secure the workloads for what's actually executing in your cloud environment, and you need to secure application development that's being deployed into cloud. And those are really the four hot areas. In terms of cloud access, you've got workers working potentially from anywhere, and they need to access the internet, and they're accessing cloud because they're accessing web applications or accessing websites. Traditionally, that's been done through web gateways. They need to access all these sprawling SaaS applications. Traditionally, that's been supported and secured through cloud application security brokers, or CASBs. And then the workers from anywhere need to access your own infrastructure. So either in private data centers, rented data centers, or in public cloud. So you need to secure access to what you don't own, what you're renting, and then what you actually own yourself. Traditionally, the last one was like VPNs, which is now evolving into the wider zero trust network access. So what's happening in this space is that it's all converging into a new cloud-based offering around Security Service Edge, which bring those together in a single cloud-based platform. And the beauty of it is it's accessible from anywhere. It collapses down the number of vendors, the number of technologies you're dealing with. And also, because it's an integration and a consolidation, the actual tooling works better in an integrated manner. And then when you add in SD-WAN, which is that software-defined networking aspect, you're into the whole area of SASE, which I think a lot of people will have heard about. So there is a continued drive across consolidation in terms of securing access to the cloud in a single unified cloud-based platform. And there's a lot of evolution happening in that space to help organizations who need to modernize their security architectures. On the security cloud configuration side, we've had for a while now cloud security posture management, which is really providing visibility of your assets in public cloud, the security and compliance, the infrastructure as code scanning, which is crucial, because no longer are people in public cloud sitting down behind a keyboard and tapping in the configuration of, okay, please create this virtual machine. Here's the security settings for my public, storage or whatever, my blob storage in Azure or my AWS buckets. All that's been done by the developers in code now, and it's been pushed out in production very rapidly through these continuous integration, continuous deployment pipelines. So it's crucial that that gets scanned before it gets deployed rather than post-deployment, so that you can spot the vulnerabilities early. Policies and frameworks, so the ability to apply different standards and policies to your configuration to make sure they're compliant. There's also an evolution now. By far the most popular container orchestration platform is Kubernetes, and there's now a whole evolution of Kubernetes security posture management to make sure all of that orchestration is secure as well. And then you need to worry about the identities and the entitlements of those identities working in the cloud. And there's a whole category called Cloud Identity Entitlements Management to help you manage the security of that side of things. But fortunately, rather than have to remember all these things, all these are coming together, they're converging into single tools and providing multi-cloud support to crack that problem of the multi-cloud issue, providing detection, the visibility Rich talked about, alerting and remediation capability, all from the same environment. On the SaaS side then, there's an emerging category for SaaS security posture management, which kind of does the same thing as CSPM, but for SaaS applications. And again, happily, there's a bit of convergence going on here too, because there's also SaaS management platforms evolving to help organizations just manage their SaaS platforms. And we talked earlier about the CASB aspect of SSE, and there's a merging of the SaaS security posture management into those tool sets as well, so to help with the proliferation of vendors and tools that we have. In terms of securing the cloud workloads, then we've got the cloud workload protection platforms. So they really are looking at the containers, the runtime applications, protecting server workloads in hybrid, not just in the public, but also in the private and hybrid cloud environments, providing that visibility into physical machines, virtual machines, containers and serverless workloads, and providing all of the protection around that. And what you're seeing now is a convergence between the configuration side and the workload side coming together in combined toolings as well. And then finally, the secure cloud app development, which is crucial now, the scanning of the actual software to look for both the code and the binaries, looking for vulnerabilities, doing dynamic testing, crucially software composition analysis, because very, very little code today is just standalone. It's pulling in libraries from everywhere, as we learned from Log4j. So looking at what actually is the code made of, what are the vulnerabilities in those third parties, and making sure that there's no risk there. All coming together again in kind of converged tool sets. So even though I talked a lot about convergence within those four categories, still quite a lot of different areas. But the good news is that there is a kind of a macro convergence happening to help with cloud security. Because there's too many tools, too little time. Organizations are pushing code. 77% are pushing new code weekly, and nearly half of organizations are actually putting out new code every day. And that could be infrastructure code with configuration in it. Most organizations struggle to identify the tools they need and say that the proliferation of tools and the fact that they're all fragmented means that there are blind spots. So, happy news, even though there was an alphabet soup of acronyms and terms, really you only have to remember one acronym now, which is the Cloud Native Application Protection Platforms, or CNAPP, which looks at that full life cycle. It takes combines all the functionality of that artifact scanning in the development cycle, integrates into the DevOps cycle, not so much to slow down developers or to block them, but actually to provide guide rails so that if a vulnerability creeps in somewhere, whether through code, third party or whatever, that it can be detected quickly and remediated. So you've got the artifact scanning, you've got the cloud configuration I talked about, and you've got the runtime workload protection. All with the ability also to throw off detection and response into your, whether it be an internal SOC environment or a managed detection and response service. So there's a lot of development in this area. By 2025, 60% of enterprises will have consolidated their vendors between cloud, posture management and workload protection, and 75% of cloud security posture management purchases will be part of a CNAPP offering. I see this every day in the market talking to vendors. Some of them are coming from that cloud security arena, and they're adding in the other functionality either through development or through acquisition, or vice versa. You got the workload protection guys starting to bolt in a lot of the configuration management side. And you can see here that in terms of where is the investment in cloud security tooling going, the huge proportion of it is going into CNAPP. So that's where the market is evolving because of this. The market is going towards where the problem is. And already there's lots of tools out there that have a lot of this functionality. No one vendor yet has everything to the best in breed capability, but there are certainly a lot of vendors out there and technologies that have much of this functionality in an integrated manner now. I just want to touch briefly before I finish is apart from just the technology side, let's not forget that general security frameworks are equally applicable to the cloud. So security frameworks can be very useful in cloud security as well. And really which one to use depends on your starting point. So if you're using existing frameworks like ISO 27001, then there is guidance available how to apply that to cloud in 2017. If you're a fan or a user of the CIS Top 18 controls, there's a Cloud Companion guide how to interpret those controls for cloud. And even though the NIST framework, the Cyber Essentials, don't specifically have a companion guide for cloud, a lot of them cover aspects of cloud security as well. If you're in public sector or you're selling into public sector, then often NCSC or government-backed frameworks can be applicable. So Cyber Essentials Plus has some guidance around cloud security, and the UK NCSC has published its cloud security principles, which are available free online. If you're like a cloud service provider, like whether, or a SaaS provider, or you're kind of cloud native and everything you do is in the cloud, then there are specific frameworks available for cloud, such as the Cloud Controls Matrix from the Cloud Security Alliance, which is very comprehensive. And then if you're one of those lightweight users, you don't have much sensitive data in the cloud, then there are lightweight frameworks as well that are much more readily available and quick to implement for smaller organizations. And then also the cloud providers themselves, like Azure, AWS, have their well-architected framework that can help you with securely configuring your cloud environment. And those frameworks also help with the likes of resilience, with cost optimization and other factors, important factors like that as well. And Google has their equivalent Google Cloud Framework as well. So I thought it was important just to mention those. So just in summary, to recommend, what are the recommendations? Like, keep in mind cloud security is IT security. Make sure you assess, define the scope, and leverage third-party expertise where you need it. So for example, if you really don't know where you are in terms of cloud security, then a cloud security assessment could be a very good start just to get a benchmark from where you are. Make sure you think about the full cloud security scope. So, what do you mean by cloud and cloud security? So it's and I'll cover just a summary in a minute of what's in there. Use the controls framework that I just mentioned. They can be very helpful. And then, like any good cyber security hygiene, do regular testing and controls testing and make sure that scope includes your cloud environment. And then consider, as I said, all aspects of securing cloud, public, private, infrastructure, PaaS and SaaS, securing cloud access, get a grip on your SaaS usage. Cloud configuration is kind of one of the big ticket items. If you do nothing else, really focus on that. Monitor and protect your cloud workloads. Shift more into the development cycle with your security and try and integrate with the DevOps cycle. And look at that journey towards that full CNAP integration. So, just to wrap up, what if I asked the AI to generate an illustration of someone who's very happy that they know what to do about cloud security? And this is what I came up with. So I'd just like to finish to say, celer dirty scrutity soli cuity, which roughly translated means, I hope you now feel more like these guys than the ones at the start. Thank you.